Yeah, I mean, you're kind of pointing in all the, these are the challenges, actually, truly. I think one is, it is very uncomfortable to kind of work in an environment that's very hostile to journalists, which is kind of often where I found myself. Um, and yes, there's a lot of variables to navigate. One is obviously personal safety and kind of taking measured risks. For yourself, but also really for your sources. And like, every single time I've embarked on doing something that was slightly sensitive, which is often kind of what you want to do, is like kind of push the boundary in terms of what you can cover and what you can, the stories you can tell. I mean, it's stressful, because you're responsible for the work, but you're also responsible in many ways for the implications the work can have on these people's lives. And so it's a very careful negotiation. One is in finding the sources. I mean, oftentimes this hostile environment, yes, it presents challenges for you as a reporter, but it doesn't need to be a threat that's made directly to you. It's just simply the fear that people kind of carry, and that prevents them from really opening up and talking to you or taking your call or like saying, okay, yeah, I'm down, I'm gonna like tell you about my experience doing this and this and that. So oftentimes it's really working very hard and slowly and accepting kind of the process of finding your sources and cultivating a sense of trust, so that they can eventually make this choice of like wanting and being like, ready to get a lot of no's before you get a yes. But really looking for the yes and working very hard to get the yes, and it often does come. And then cultivating that trust and then figuring out how you're gonna tell the story, what's the safest way, but what's the most compelling way, and what's the unique thing that you have that you can like really work with, and how do you also negotiate what kind of safeguards you can put in place. So like one of the stories, one of the more recent stories I worked on was about sexual assaults against women in state institutions like prisons and jails, and obviously an incredibly like sensitive and kind of difficult subject to cover, just because it's a repressive state in general, and so very few people are going to want to come out and say this happened to me, but a few people did, but with different levels of comfort, and I think two women, like kind of their own thinking was, we've already been through this, we're sort of already at risk of going to jail, of being imprisoned. We're willing to take that risk and speak out and like put us on camera. And like, I think one of the things I was trying to do is really get their voices. I wanted them to tell the story instead of me telling the story. And so I was really looking to get these testimonials, personal testimonials, because I think it's so much more powerful to hear someone talk about what happened to them, and like express themselves, versus me saying, oh, this is happening as a trend. But of course, pulling back and telling that story as a journalist is very important, but I really wanted these voices captured. And then there was a woman who had she fled the country and was in Turkey, and she was only comfortable, like she wasn't comfortable showing her face because she was scared for her family who were still living in Egypt. So again, we kind of shot the interview in a way where we masked her face, but she was still, you can still see and hear her voice, And then there's one woman who's only comfortable hearing her voice, and I still thought that was still worth capturing, even though and we basically, the way we framed the interviews in a very similar way, and it was always like the woman sitting in the middle of the frame on a chair looking straight to camera. And in the one instance where the woman did not want to be filmed at all, we actually just used her voice and left the chair, open. So it's it's about getting creative. It's about understanding what you're trying to do, and about like really being very targeted in how you choose to tell your story, and what's the most effective, and how do you get people to care, and so yeah. So negotiating things, variables, being careful and responsible and hopeful and very diligent, and yeah, taking measured risks. I mean, I think there were moments definitely where, even publishing the story, before publishing the story, one of the challenges is you just don't know when you're going to get in trouble or what's going to get you in trouble, potentially. And as an Egyptian working in Egypt, I don't have the protection of being an American, for example. But I did have the protection of working for the New York Times, which is, a real platform, and they would go to, they would fight for me. But the point is, at the end of the day, I did meet with a lawyer before I published the story, just to discuss what are the potential legal implications, or what would happen if. And his response to me was like, take your chances, So we did, and it was okay.